Hey there, welcome to the third lesson. In this third part of the course, we'll be studying in depth the emitters. I've saved different scenes with all the emitters so that we can see how they work. Okay, so we are going to have a look at each of them. Right? The first area emitter is the circle. The one that we saw previously in the introduction of the course. As you can see, it's an emitter with the shape of a circle. And here in the panel, the emitters properties are displayed. And you'll see that these are the same for all of them. We can tweak parameters such as the volume, speed, vertical random. Here, for instance, after changing the speed, we'll see that the fluid speed varies, and now less particles are generated, so it's slower. Now go to the volume. This feature creates a defined volume of particles, and obviously, depending on the value we set, the size of this volume will vary, as you can see on the screen. Okay? So, when we set it at 0, the default values are restored. Let's activate the side emission parameter. What happens? That the particles are emitted from the emitter's edge. So, instead of pouring out along the emission axis, particles are emitted sideways. See? Great. The next emitter is the cylinder. And as you can observe, it's made up of two circles. The particles are emitted sideways. If we click on the emission panel, we can tweak parameters such as the speed or the random, as we saw before, okay? Let's move on now to the next one. Well, first I'm going to undock the panel, okay, and bring it here so that the emitters list is visible, okay? So we just saw the cylinder, and now we're going to work with the fill, which is this one. This emitter allows us to create the shape of an object by filling the particles. We just created a cube, but it can be any other object. Although, bear in mind that the more complex the mesh is, the more complex the simulation process will be. Anyway, this time it's a cube, which is a quite simple object. Then, within the emitter settings, we selected Fill as emitter type and drag the object to this slot. In this case, the object is a cube, as I said. Okay, after setting these parameters, we filled the liquid with particles, creating a cube. With the jittering option, we can alter particles distribution and create a solid surface or a liquid one with more waves. If we go here and tweak the seed parameters, we'll also be able to change the particles distribution speed. With fill ratio X, we can achieve partial filling. It's like we were cutting the cube. See? Important, guys. We can animate each of these parameters by simulating them at a specific keyframe. Let's bring the indicator to the beginning and select the option Fill Ratio X. Then move the time indicator to, for instance, 30 keyframes. So this cube is simulated through these frames. Okay, let's see the animation. First, cache a simulation so that you can see it clearly. Great. Well, guys, as you can see, animating is an easy task, right? So this emitter type, the fill, allows us to create a particular body. In fill mode, we can select the non-solid volume option, okay? But guys, don't forget to remove the cache every time we make one, so that we can work more effectively. Okay, this is very important. Also, I'm going to remove the animations I just created. Great. If I click on Fill Solid Region, you'll see that it is the object's inner areas that are filled. Whereas with the Fill Non-Solid Volume option, it adds particles outside the volume. Okay, see the difference? I recommend that you play around with the different parameters to check what features are available. What about the next emitter? This one is called Image. Let's open it. Here it goes. Well, this emitter is really cool, and you'll see why. So here we have this square with a hole inside. How does it happen? The image lets us load an image sequence as an emission mask. Let me clarify it. Click on the emitter and go to the emitter settings. Toggle the emitter type and select Image. Then add a gradient to the texture parameter. How? Go to the bar at the bottom and create a new material. Then in the shader properties, select a gradient. I'll pick a circular one. And here we can move the slider to decide the amount of shadows of the gradient. For instance, color white indicates liquid, while the dark areas is the whole. Okay? So it's up to us, the gradient we want to create, okay? I think I'm going to do it like that. Okay, after that, drag the gradient to the texture option within the Emitters Property panel. The plugin takes the whole, the dark shadow, as the area with no water. Obviously, apart from the liquid, there are other options much more interesting. It was just an example, okay? Let's cache a simulation again to see the animation. Okay, great. And well, this is how we can generate fluid from an image. The next emitter is the linear one. I'm going to open it. It's also a quite useful emitter. Okay, perfect. In this case, particles flow out in the shape of a straight line. We find the parameters here in this panel to modify the emitter. So we can change the height or the randomness, as well as the speed. Okay, so this emitter is great for creating a waterfall effect, for instance. Now, let's move on to the next one, the object emitter. It is quite similar to an emitter we saw before. The only difference is that particles emit out from the object. In this case, we have a cube, okay, with different faces. Then, if we drag the cube to the emitter's body option, the liquid will be generated from the cube's faces. See? The liquid flows out from the faces, from the sides, okay? In the Emitter Properties panel, we can modify certain parameters like the speed, distance, jittering, which determines the particle's distribution. We can even decide from where the particles are emitted, from the faces or the vertices. In order to see the effect clearly, we can hide the cube. Remember that we can work with a cube, a sphere, or any other object. Now we are going to talk about the sphere emitter, which is easily understandable. In this case, we are going to create a spherical emission. Again, in the Emitter Properties panel, we can modify some parameters, although in this case there are not many options. Have a look at the field sphere effect. Here. Okay, if we activate it, the sphere will be filled. While if we disable it, the sphere won't have fill. See the difference? So without fill, there's less liquid. It dilutes gradually. This effect would be great for simulating explosions, for example. Okay, the next emitter is the spline one. Okay, so once the spline is created, we can use different views if we want to see it more clearly, okay? So create a spline and drag the spline into the new emitter. After that, we can get the animation we want by modifying the emitter settings. Let's say we want the spline's particle to be created along the spline's axis. Then we would get this curtain or waterfall effect, which depends on the spline's shape. The particles flow out upwards since gravity is disabled. Within the creation setting, we can also find the tube option, which generates a really curious effect, and the edge option, according to which the particles are created at the first control point of the spline and move along it. Okay, so it moves along the spline path. A similar effect can be created with a demon, which will be seen in a moment. So this emitter is used to create particles along a spline path. Okay? The two last emitters are the square and the triangle, which are really popular. So here we have our square, and it has the same parameters. In this case, we can opt for creating an emission from the sides or downwards, okay? Then, the triangle works in the same way. Okay? We can select side emission or not, as we did with the square. Well, guys, these are the emitters. We can combine them with other effects in order to get really cool animations. Well, in the next lesson, we'll be looking into the different types of demons, which are these. Okay, so see you there.